Quick everyone, we don't have much time. The reactor's gonna blow! It's part 2 of Chernobyl, the most Ukrainian of the Soviet reactors that we have, with the systems that are completely fail-safe. There's no worries about the explosion. No explosion for you. We've got stickers. Who doesn't like stickers? Do you like stickers? Do you want stickers? Do you want free stickers? All you have to do, take out whatever listening device you're using to consume this free media and scroll down in the show notes. I've usually got learn more about at blah blah blah.com. I think it's Carousel Sniper Victim or Dead Glass Design, whatever, they all take you to the same place. You could click on that. That will give you the ability to hit contact, and then you could just send your postal address if you want and your name, and you could get some free stickers wherever you are in the world. We'll send them out to you, and also a little bonus thing as well. Just because we're sick cunts like that, and we love yous, and we appreciate the fact that you listen to us. It gives us ego boosts, and it cradles our fragile sense of self-worth. Yeah, that'll do. We had the 60 nugget challenge over the weekend. I'm thinking of putting it out as a breakdown because we didn't really do one over the weekend because we had the 60 nugget challenge as well, so I might do that. But you can go watch it on Facebook. It's archived there, 5ever. Quick shout outs: Troy Rowland, Matt B, Daniel Holmes, sup dogs, cheers for the follows, Alex Cherry, Rob and Tom, everyone that was there for the live feed, for live stream on the weekend. Bunch of legends, we love you all. So again, this is part 2 of Chernobyl. If you haven't listened to part 1, I recommend you obviously go back and listen to part 1. If you don't give any shit about consistency or continuity of story, then just listen to this one. But yeah, part 1 of Chernobyl, and this is part 2. I think that's all we had, so other than that, enjoy.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You're listening to Carousel Sniper Victim, a Dead Glass Design production, with your host, Shaun Jeffery.
This teleproduction, a current assessment of the nuclear accident at Chernobyl, was produced in the Directorate of Intelligence.
An official announcement from
Unless viewers of Moscow television were watching the 9 p.m. news closely on Monday, April 28, they would have missed the brief and buried report of the biggest nuclear accident in history, an accident that had occurred at least 2 days earlier at Chernobyl in the Ukraine.
Two technicians are running down the hallway. Alexander and Victor are trainees. They were present to watch and learn the inner workings of the reactor at Chernobyl. After the explosion, they were sent by Dyatlov and Akimov to the central hall to turn the handles of the system for manually lowering the presumably seized control rods. The control rods that have long since vaporized. They're melted, exploded, them and the reactor is gone. They ran through the deaerator gallery to the right of the unit elevator, found it destroyed, so climbed up the staircase instead towards level 36. They missed 2 other technicians who used another stairwell heading in the opposite direction. Level 36 was destroyed, covered with rubble. They went through a narrow corridor towards the central hall, entered the reactor hall, and found it blocked with rubble and fragments. Dangling fire hoses were pouring water into the remains of the reactor core. The firemen were not there anymore. The upper biological shield was slanted, jammed into the reactor shaft. A blue and red fire raged in the hull. The minute that the two stood above the reactor was enough to darken their bodies with nuclear tan and give them both a fatal radiation dose. They returned to level 10 and to the control room, reporting the situation. Dyatlov insisted they were wrong. The explosion had been caused by the hydrogen-oxygen mixture in the emergency tank. The reactor itself was intact. The reactor section foreman arrived at the control room as well, shortly after the explosions, then returned to search for his comrades. He witnessed the destruction of the reactor building from the broken windows of the deaerator gallery. With his face already tanned by the radiation, he went to the dosimetry room and asked Gobrachenko, the operator present, for radiation levels. They were off the charts. He then went to the nearby pump room and found it empty. Vomiting and losing consciousness, he returned to the main control room to report the situation. Chernobyl Dispatch 1986. Firefighters are informed of the fire at reactors 3 and 4. Call everybody. Alexander Yevchenko was located in his office between reactors 3 and 4 on level 12. He was the one who described the event as a shockwave that buckled walls, blew doors in and brought a cloud of milky grey radioactive dust and steam. The lights went out. He met a badly burned, drenched and shocked pump operator who asked him to rescue Kodemchuk. That quickly proved impossible as that part of the building did not exist anymore. Yevchenko, together with the foreman Yuri, ran out of the building and saw half of the building gone, and the reactor emitting a blue glow of ionized air. They returned to the building and met the two junior technicians ordered by Dyatlov and Akimov to manually lower the presumably seized control rods. Despite Yevchenko's explanation that there were no control rods left, the four climbed a stairwell to level 35 to survey the damage. Yevchenko held open the massive door into the reactor room, and the other three proceeded in to locate the control rod mechanism. After no more than a minute of surveying the reactor debris, enough for all three to sustain fatal doses of radiation, they returned, their skin too darkened with nuclear tan. Those three were the first to die in the Moscow hospital. Yevchenko meanwhile suffered serious beta burns and gamma burns to his left shoulder, hip and calf as he kept the massive radioactive dust-covered door open, as we know. At 1:35 AM approximately, firemen were fighting fires on the roof of the turbine hall. Firefighters arrived from Pripyat and Kibernoksgard as well. Grigory Kamel, the driver of one of the fire engines, later described what happened.
We arrived there at 10 or 15 minutes to 2 in the morning. We saw graphite scattered about. Mishka asked, "Is that graphite?" I kicked it away, but one of the fighters on the truck picked it up. "It's hot," he said. The pieces of graphite were of different sizes, some big, some small, enough to pick them up. We didn't know much about radiation. Even those who worked there had no idea. There was no water left in the trucks. Misha filled a cistern and we aimed the water at the top. Then those boys who went up died on the roof. Vashchik, Kolya, and others. Voldia, Pravik, they went up that ladder, and I never saw them again.
However, a fireman stationed in Chernobyl offered a different description.
I remember joking to the others, "There must be an incredible amount of radiation here. We'll be lucky if we're still alive in the morning."
20 years after the disaster, he said the firefighters from Fire Station No. 2 were aware of the risks.
"Of course we knew. If we'd followed regulations, we would have never gone near the reactor. But it was a moral obligation. It was our duty. We were like kamikaze."
Around 2 AM, Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer, ordered Akimov, the unit shift chief, to feed water to the reactor and, together with Gobrachenko, a radiation monitoring technician, went to survey the plant from the outside. Despite seeing the fuel and graphite scattered around, he still believed the reactor was intact. Then they returned to the control room. At 5 AM he got sick too, and together with Gobrachenko, went to the medical unit. At around 2:15 am, the Pripyat Department of the Ministry of Home Affairs calls a crisis meeting. It has decided to organise a roadblock in order to prevent cars from entering or leaving the town. Police assistance is requested. Thousands of police arrive, and, as with the firefighters, they have no knowledge of radiation, no dosimeters, or protective clothing. At 2:30 am, Brukhanov, the plant manager, arrives at the bunker under the administrative block. Akimov reports a serious radiation accident, but that the reactor is intact. Fires are in the process of being extinguished and a second emergency water pump being ready to cool the reactor. Due to the limitations of available instruments, they seriously underestimate the radiation level. At 3 am, Brukhanov called the Deputy Secretary for the nuclear power industry, reporting Akimov's version of the situation. The Deputy Secretary sent the message further up the chain of command. It eventually reached Gorbachev and other members of the Politburo. 3:30 am, the fire chief contacted Akimov asking what was happening to his firemen. Akimov sent him a dosimetrist. At 4 am, further firefighting units arrived from Chernobyl, Pelesko and Kiev. At 4:30, Akimov reported an intact reactor and damage to the emergency water feed tank. The new shift manager ordered continuous feeding of water into the reactor, which was already in progress by emergency pump 2 from the de-aerators. The shift manager kept pressing the staff to feed water to the reactor and transferred more people to Unit 4 to replace those being disabled by radiation sickness. After Dyatlov, the previous shift manager, had left, technicians were ordered to climb to the roof of Unit C and survey the reactor. One obeyed and received a fatal radiation dose there. At 10 am, he returned and reported to the shift manager and Brukhanov that the reactor was indeed destroyed. The managers, though, refused to believe him and ordered that water continued to be fed into the reactor. The water, however, flowed through the severed pipes into the lower levels of the plant, carrying radioactive debris and causing short circuits in the electric cables. At 5 am, militia commander General Burdov arrives from Kiev. At 6 am, Akimov, already nauseous, was replaced by the unit chief, but together with other technicians stayed in the plant. Believing the water flow to the reactor to be blocked by a closed valve somewhere, they went to the half-destroyed feedwater room on level 24. Akimov, along with 3 other technicians, opened the valves on the 2 feedwater lines, then climbed over to level 27, and almost knee-deep in a mixture of fuel and water, opened 2 valves on the 300 line. Due to advancing radiation poisoning, they did not have the strength to open the valves on the other side. Akimov spent several hours turning valves. The radioactive water in room 712 was half submerging the pipelines he was trying to reach. Vladimir Sashonok, the automatic systems adjuster, was supposed to be in room 604. The landing was found damaged, covered with ankle-deep water, and there were leaks of boiling water and radioactive steam. Sashonok was found unconscious in the room, pinned under a fallen beam, with bloody foam coming out of his mouth. His body was severely contaminated by radioactive water. He was carried out by Gorbachenko and another technician, but died at 6 am in the Pripyat hospital under the care of the chief physician, without ever regaining consciousness. Gorbachenko, the radiation monitoring technician, suffered a radiation burn on his back where Sashonok's hand was located when he helped carry him out. Kodumchuk and Sashonok were the first 2 victims of the Chernobyl disaster. Meanwhile, at 8 am, the new shift clocks on all 4 units. 286 men continue to work on the construction of the 5th and 6th reactors nearby. A government committee is established. When they arrive, they are surprised by the bits of graphite they see laying around everywhere. None of them suspected a graphite fire. Following the explosion, many inhabitants of Pripyat gathered on the railway bridge just outside of the city. This provided a view of the nuclear power plant. They spoke of beautiful flames in all of the colours of the rainbow, the burning graphite, and how the flames reached higher than the pillars of the smoke. Sadly, what they didn't know was that the wind that swept over them carried with it a dose of radiation. Of the people standing on the bridge that night, not one survived. It's now often referred to as the Bridge of Death. Within hours of the disaster, the Soviet Deputy Energy Minister wrote a secret message to the Soviet Communist Party detailing an explosion in the upper part of the reactor, the collapse of the walls and part of the roof. Staff were taking measures to cool the, quote, active zone of the reactor, adding that there was no need for the evacuation of the nearby town of Pripyat. That same morning, buses begin to arrive in Pripyat. They wait for the command to actually evacuate the city, spending the entire night in a state of alert. At this stage, helicopters begin making the first drops of sand, boron, and lead. Between the 27th of April and the 1st of May, about 1,800 helicopter flights deposit over 5,000 metric tons of sand, lead, clay, and neutron-absorbing boron onto the burning reactor. It is now known that virtually none of the neutron absorbers reach down to the core. A Ukrainian filmmaker captured footage of one of the Mi-8 helicopters as its main rotor collided with a nearby construction crane. This resulted in the death of the entire 4-man crew. By midday the following day, after the explosion, the 27th of April, radiation levels dropped slightly. There was a brief hope that no evacuation would be necessary. However, the level of radiation rises again and reaches its maximum level. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, the evacuation of Pripyat begins. Residents were given 2 hours to gather their belongings. The evacuation of Pripyat's 43,000 residents took 3.5 hours, using 1,200 buses from Kiev. Residents remember that everyone was in a hurry, but nobody was panicking. The residents of Pripyat were asked to carry with them only what was required for 2 or 3 days: some food, a change of underwear, and their identity papers. Dosimeters were confiscated. Queues of jammed buses left the city, one after the other, like giant beetles, kilometre after kilometre. The traffic was insane. Only a Second World War survivor can imagine a similar scene. Of those who tried to return later, having realised that Pripyat was lost forever, to fetch belongings of affection, some succeeded, but many more encountered alarm-wired buildings and armed military. An excerpt of the evacuation announcement states,
"For the attention of the residents of Pripyat, the City Council informs you that due to the accident at Chernobyl power station in the city of Pripyat, the radioactive conditions in the vicinity are deteriorating. The Communist Party, its officials, and the armed forces are taking necessary steps to combat this. Nevertheless, with the view to keep people as safe and healthy as possible, the children being of top priority, we need to temporarily evacuate the citizens in the nearest towns of Kiev Oblast. For these reasons, starting from April the 27th, 1986, 2 p.m, each apartment block will be able to have a bus at its disposal, supervised by the police and the city officials. It is highly advisable to take your documents, some vital personal belongings, and a certain amount of food, just in case, with you. The senior executives of public and industrial facilities of the city has decided on the list of employees needed to stay in Pripyat to maintain these facilities in a good working order. All the houses will be guarded by the police during the evacuation period. Comrades, leaving your residence temporarily, please make sure you have turned off the lights, electrical equipment and water, and also shut the windows. Please keep calm and orderly in the process of this short-term evacuation."
32 years later, Pripyat is still a ghost town to this day. The 2nd of May, now 7 days after the initial explosion. Beneath the reactor, 2 floors of bubbler pools served as a large water reservoir for the emergency cooling pumps. After the disaster, the pools and the basement were flooded because of the ruptured cooling water pipes and accumulated firefighting water. The smouldering graphite Fuel and other material above at a temperature of more than 1200 degrees Celsius started to burn through the reactor floor and mix with molten concrete from the reactor lining. This created corium, a radioactive semi-liquid material comparable to lava. If this mixture melted through the floor into the pool of water, it was feared it would create a serious steam explosion that would eject even more radioactive material from the reactor. It was therefore necessary to drain the pool. 3 engineers volunteered: Alexei and Aneko, who knew where the valves were, Valery Bezpalov, and Boris Baranov, whose job was to hold a submersible light. Their light failed almost immediately, and they were forced to proceed in darkness. The gates opened. The water was drained. All of them returned to the surface, and according to Ananeko, their colleagues jumped for joy when they heard that they had managed to open the valves. Despite their good condition after completion of the task, all of them suffered from radiation sickness and later died. Some sources claim incorrectly that they died at the plant. With the bubbler pool gone, a meltdown was less likely to produce a powerful steam explosion. To do so, the molten core would now have to reach the water table below the reactor. To reduce the likelihood of this, it was decided to freeze the earth beneath the reactor, which would also stabilise the foundations. Using oil drilling equipment, the injection of liquid nitrogen began on the 4th of May. It was estimated that 25 metric tons of liquid nitrogen per day would be required to keep the soil frozen at minus 1000 degrees Celsius. This idea was soon scrapped, and the room where the cooling system would have been installed was filled with concrete. On the 9th of May, one of the first firemen at the scene died of acute radiation sickness a few days before his 21st birthday, in Hospital No.6 in Moscow. His body is laid to rest in a sealed zinc coffin in the Matinskoe Cemetery, Moscow. He posthumously received the medals of the Order of Lenin and Hero of the Soviet Union. The following day, Alexander Akimov died having received radiation burns to 100% of his body. He was posthumously awarded the Order for Courage of the 3rd degree. Having been in the control room at the time of the explosion, he received fatal doses of radiation during attempts to restart the feed water flow into the reactor. On the 22nd of May, the Russian First Deputy Health Minister denies a popular belief through the USSR that vodka and red wine is a good cure for radiation exposure. The following day, a Soviet government committee orders the distribution of iodine preparations. At this point, it is of no medical value. Radioactive iodine is only active for 10 days and will already have accumulated in the thyroid glands of the inhabitants by the time they receive their treatment. On the 27th of May, 1 month after the accident, the danger is not yet over. A concrete structure will be built. The idea of the sarcophagus is born. This concrete container will seal in the radioactive disaster site, although the engineers soon let out that it only has a projected lifespan of 30 years. Meanwhile, workers continue to operate the other 3 reactors. On the 15th of December, the year 2000, Chernobyl Reactor 3 was finally shut down and decommissioned. On the 17th of September 2007, the project contract for the new safe confinement shelter over Reactor 4 is finally signed, with a French consortium, Novaka, constructing the 150 by 257 metre arch structure. On the 24th of July 2015, the 2 halves of the new safe confinement sections are brought together. Because of its enormous dimensions, the arch was built in 2 sections. Nearly 1,000 bolts will join the 2 sections together. And now, in 2018, the project is complete. The €2.1 billion or $2.2 billion structure, sponsored by the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, has been edged into place over the existing crumbling dome that the Soviets built in haste when disaster struck over 3 decades ago. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko was visibly proud at his impoverished and war-torn country's ability to deal with one of the worst vestiges of its Soviet past. Quote, "Many people had doubts and refused to believe that this was possible," Poroshenko told the festive ceremony held in front of the gleaming new dome. "But my friends, I congratulate you. Yes, we did it. Yeah, good job, team. We did it. It only took us 30 plus years to unfuck a problem that was made in a few seconds by a simple shitty judgment calls from a control room of a nuclear power plant. If we hadn't stomped all over Nikola Tesla's ideas for free energy, none of this would be an issue. At least we haven't had any more nuclear problems since then, right? We learned our lesson and aren't doomed to repeat the same Fukushima. But we still got to find that 600 tons of missing reactor fuel that melted through the containment unit at that one. But that's okay. I'm sure we can just build another giant rug to sweep that problem under too."
What would happen if today was your last? Would you wake up early, get blazed in the park? Would you get off your face in a bar? Would you make love sniffing cocaine in a spa? Would you say sorry for mistakes in your past? Would you try and forgive her for breaking your heart? Would you get what you came to ask before you're gone? Write a letter or record a song? Would you scuba dive, skydive, hire a Ferrari? Penthouse party, set fire to your money? Would you rob the bank, house the homeless, donate your organs to lousy smokers? Would you focus on your close fam, cook up a feast of crayfish and spit roast lamb? Would you go back home, walk the streets, score some B's, get off your guts and talk to police? Would you dance to your favorite track if it was played full blast on a train that's packed? Would you hijack a plane and crash it into Parliament for the freedom to protest an argument? Would you wish you could rewind and start again? Stop playing the Harlequin. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sun shine bright. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sun shine bright. Would you surf the crowd at a James Brown concert, sing every word and drink till you vomit? Would you wanna meet the Queen or Dalai Lama? Would you wanna meet George Bush or Osama? Would you wanna meet Ja Rule or Bambaataa? It's what you done, not where you're at or from, brother. Are you chained to a desk? Are you brave with your heart? Are you digging in the trench, in the rain and the mud? I got something that I came to ask. What would happen if today was your last? Are you sitting on the bench? Are you making your mark? Afraid of the future and ashamed of the past? I got something that I came to ask. What would happen if today was your last? Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sun shine bright. Wake up tomorrow morning, see the sun shine bright. Would you try a threesome in the back of a Commodore with a box of Cadbury chocolate body sauce? Would you want it all? Tour the Greek islands, safari through the Congo to see lions? Would you know the mystery of the Amazon? Would you know the history of the land you're on? Would you know the industry's a paragon for slimy motherfuckers like Alan Bond? Would you save Earth or finish your day's work? It's too late, your spirit's a caged bird. Would you make it worth your while? Go tonight, take a bus, steal a postie's motorbike. Would you globalize or let everybody know we're all victims of economic growth? Would you make amends, savor every second, take revenge on your boss with a heavy weapon? Would you let him know your darkest secret, reveal all in your partner's grieving? Would you escape from a divvy van, fuck like you're being taped on minicam? What would happen if today was your last? That's what I came to ask. Wake up tomorrow.